Hi there folks, Jim Grasser, 303 Barbecue. Today we're doing what is widely considered to be the most difficult cut of meat to barbecue. We're going to get into some brisket. I've got a 12.5 pound brisket here. I'm going to go over a couple things with you to kind of talk about what type of brisket to get, what type of smoker to use, or how to cook it with your smoker, different techniques and stuff like that. Brisket can be a nightmare or it can be completely delicious. So, first and foremost, let's talk about the brisket itself. There are all sorts of different briskets. This particular one, you can go to your butcher. I only buy brisket from the butcher. I don't buy it at grocery stores or anything like that. I can buy pork at grocery stores. I buy brisket from my butcher. The reason I buy it, I can go in and say I want brisket for smoking, and I know exactly what I'm talking about. What we're looking for with a brisket, there's actually two different cuts. Do you mind kind of coming down a little bit low? You've got a narrower end here and a very thick end here. The reason this end is thicker, there's another muscle on top of here. You've got the flat and you've got the decal. The decal sits on top. When we're carving it, we're going to separate that decal, set it aside, and carve that separately. But for now, we want to make sure that that decal's on there. When you buy a brisket for smoking, you want to make sure and get a untrimmed. A lot of times they'll take the fat off, they'll take the decal off. If you get that kind of brisket, that's better for corned beef or pastrami or something like that. We want a nice, big, thick, fat cap, they're going to call it. Layer of fat. The bottom side, you're going to notice, does not have a whole lot of fat on it. This particular cut of meat comes from, call it the neck down the front of the leg. Okay? So it is a very tough cut of beef. Conducive to slow cooking, whether it's a crock pot or whether it's corned beef. Corned beef's going to take 10 or 11 days to prepare. You want a real slow preparation on this. So I'm going to start with the knife and I'm going to put it away. There are a couple different ways to prep brisket. I'm going to show you how to prep brisket for your backyard cooking. A competition cook is going to take 1/4 of an inch off. They're going to cook it at a higher temperature for a shorter period of time. I'm going to put this in my smoker for a very long period of time. This piece of meat's going to cook for about 14 hours, give or take. I'm looking for an internal temperature of about 190 degrees-ish. If medium is 135, well done, somewhere around 155. 190 degrees, we're going well past well done. The other thing, what it's doing, that's slow cooking, it's breaking down the collagens inside there, all the elastic pieces kind of holding the fibers together. What we're looking for at the end of the day is after you've cooked it, you should be able to grab a piece of meat and pull it, and it should separate right down the middle, nice and clean. We'll get there. So ignore carving all the fat cap off. If you're doing a competition brisket, you're going to prep it different. I'm talking about how to cook it for your friends coming over. How to knock their socks off with good brisket. The other thing is the quality of the smoker, and I've never really talked about the smokers that I use. I have tried wood-fired smokers. I'm a big fan of wood-fired. I think the authenticity that you get from the flavor of wood-fired is somewhat unparalleled. I've tried electric smokers like the little Brinkmans that you can buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. I probably shouldn't say those words, but you know what I'm talking about. I personally cook on a Traeger, Traeger, and I'm going to try and figure out how to maybe put a Traeger link on here. I use the XL150. It's huge. I can put I can get about 6 of these into my smoker. The average backyard cooker probably doesn't need something that big, but I do a lot of cooking. Traeger's awesome. It's a pellet driven. You basically dump in these little wood pellets and it automatically feeds. You can set it to like a temperature that you want. When I talk about my cooking times, they're kind of in reference to Traegers. If you're doing wood-fired, you're going to have different cooking times. I'm going to put this in for 14 hours, 12 hours at 180 degrees, the last couple hours at 225 degrees. What I'm looking for is to bring that internal temperature up to 190. If you're working on a wood-fired, you're going to want to be somewhere around 200 degrees for probably... I'll actually say 225 for probably 10 hours, something like that. This is a 12.5 pound brisket. Brisket, you're going to want, I personally believe the bigger the better. I like 16-pound briskets. They cook. They're delicious. They're smaller. The smaller the brisket, the less fat there's going to be on it. I want a lot of fat. That fat's going to help keep it nice and juicy. When we're carving it, we're going to get rid of the fat. So, I think I've covered just about everything. As far as brisket, picking the brisket, as far as the type of smoker, rubs, different styles of cooking. Different areas you go to in the country, they're going to have spice rubs, they're going to do mops. Texas is big for mops, they're big for mesquite. I think mesquite wood on brisket is absolutely awesome. It's my favorite way to do it. That being said, I think mesquite is very one-dimensional. It works on brisket, I don't like it on pork. So I use hickory. Hickory seems to be a little bit, it works on pork, chicken, and brisket. I don't use a spice rub on it. I use salt and pepper right here. Just like a steak. You know, if you're going to do a steak, a good quality steak, you go to a steakhouse. They don't put any sort of spices on it. They do salt and pepper. Beef, I don't think needs brown sugar. I don't think it needs cumin. I don't think it needs any of that stuff. So you can mess around with spice rubs. I find salt and pepper and a lot of salt and pepper. I'm talking about. I'm going to turn this thing on and just let it go forever and ever and ever. These little automatic grinders are great. That's why I bought them as for brisket. There you have it. That's kind of the way that I prep brisket. I could have you sit there and watch me put salt and pepper on it, or you can just trust that I'm going to put a ton on. If you put a bunch on and you think that's probably a lot, maybe double that. A lot of salt, you're trying to penetrate a chunk of meat that's a couple, 3 inches thick. I want that salt to set into it. After I've salt and peppered it, I'm going to let it sit for a couple, 3 hours in the fridge, something like that. And prior to cooking it, I'm going to pull it out for about a half an hour or so and try and bring the temperature of the piece of meat up to, you know, room temperature or closer to. It tends to help with the cooking on it. So 180 degrees for about 12 hours, 225 for about another 2 hours. If you're going to do a wood-fired cooker, I'd look for a 10-hour time on a 12.5-pound cut of beef, 225, something like that. Some guys, the big guys, will do 250, 275, and just cut that cooking time down. Myron Mixon, world champion, I believe he cooks brisket at like 350 degrees or some ridiculously high temperature. Who am I to step on him and say that he doesn't do it right? So I believe a slow cook is the way to go. Brisket. Do me a favor, put comments down below if you have any questions. I'm not going to sit here and have you watch me salt this for 10 minutes because that's what I'm going to do. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments and I'll try and get back at them. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about carving it. There is a trick to carving it. The other part of brisket is not just the cook, it's also the carve. Carving it can be a trick. There's all sorts of grains going different directions. So, 303 barbecue, brisket, tons of salt, tons of pepper, good quality smoker, and really watch your temperatures. That's the biggest trick to it. Traeger, worth the investment. If you're doing it on wood fired, just really watch your temperature. You can't have the spikes, the ups and the downs in the temperature. You've got to be really consistent. I've heard of guys doing it exactly 202 degrees for a real long period of time. So there you have it.